Hello and welcome to another Bodgit and Leggit video. We have a 2006 Toyota Corolla 1.4 vvti engine and it is C, so we were going to replace it. Now there's a few ways of doing this. The way I personally like to do it is take the engine from the top with the gearbox, just because it makes your life so much easier. It's a lot easier putting a gearbox when the engine is on the floor, and it's a lot easier sinking it all down together as one unit. Now when you take the gearbox out, yes, you do have to take the drives out, but for the time it takes to do all that, it will save you a hell of a long time in the future. Also, what I like to do is, if it's possible, the exhaust manifold, I will not disconnect it from the engine. I would disconnect it from where the cap either starts or begins, depending on the car, and take the exhaust manifold out as one, because it's a lot easier to put an exhaust manifold on an engine on the ground than it is to try and get in behind and, you know, break bolts or round bolts or do all sorts. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through taking this engine out, putting the new engine in, changing all the auxiliaries over. Also going to check the clutch, because again, if you are going to do a job like this, you want to check the clutch, because if the clutch is anyways bad, you might as well just replace it, because there's going to be no labour charge in replacing the clutch, just whatever the clutch cost. But if you have to go back a week later, 2 weeks later, 6 months later, it's going to cost the customer an arm and a leg for something that you could basically save in a couple of £100 in labour. So yes, that's what we're going to do. First thing I'm going to do, take off the airbox, take out the battery, take off the engine cover, and start disconnecting stuff. Sorted. Right, there's a few things you want to get sorted first. With you doing an engine, if you haven't done one before, there's a lot of bits you might be taking off, especially when you get the new engine in. You know, you'll have to, if you take the same bits off, you're going to have the same amount of bolts and you might be confused. So keep everything together. If you take something off, for example, even if something as simple as the cover, the 10mm bolts that are on it, turn the cover upside down, put the 10mm bolts back on the cover well away from where you're working, so you can't kick it over or anything like that. Same with the airbox, put the bolts back in the airbox, or whatever the case may be. It just makes your life easier. Whatever you take off, keep the bolts and the bits together, and then you can't really get confused. What I'm going to do first is take off this cover, just remove these few plastic clips and take out the battery, a couple of 10mm bolts. Once I've done that, because there's no point in me showing that, and we'll turn the camera back on and we'll see exactly what we need to do. Oh yeah, and we've got Stephen helping us out. Yeah, sorted. Okay, the dog can see the rabbit now. There was a little plate just below the battery, which the battery sits on, 4 10mm bolts. I removed that as well. Removed the engine cover. So we're going to get to the airbox now, and again, you know, there's clips and stuff, so you just remove everything you can, just because it's so much easier to do it now, and you don't want anything to break, even though you have to be careful, because you can easily break these connections. Put them off in a second. But the things like the throttle cable, the best thing to do first is we're going to remove the airbox and take everything. The more you can take off, the better, but then also in the same breath, the less you can take off, the better. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. So I'll just get that. Here we go. Take the whole thing off actually here. Now that's the case in point right there. This throttle cable here, it's not a big deal if you loosen these bolts here, because it's not hard to adjust. But if you can avoid it, you can avoid it. So we'll just lift it up. Oh, it's all seized in there. Great. Wasn't expecting that. But anyway, we'll just whip off this bracket. Well, my lad say it is Jap. Yep. Battery powered tools obviously will also save you a hell of a lot of time. But now when I take that off, granted I might have to adjust it a little bit with the new engine, but the chances are I won't have to. That's completely seized. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back in here, just so we know exactly where it is. Now, that is completely seized in there. That won't rock like it should do. So we'll get some pliers and we'll see. We have to be careful here now, because we don't want to break any of this. I'm wondering. No, I was going to say, should we just remove the throttle, but just going to have to get in there. There we go, it's moving now. I'm going to put a bit of lube in there, get in there, wiggle it about a bit, and we can get that off. But things like this, for example, as well, the airbox needs to come off. 2 10mm. We just leave them in there, and we know we're going to be good to go. Bang that on top. Sorted. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mess around with this a bit longer, get that cleared, and then I'm just going to start taking stuff off. No point in filming it, in the sense of like disconnecting the coil pack leads, disconnecting the injectors, disconnecting the starter motor, try and get the wiring loom away from the engine. Once I've kind of disconnected a few things, I'll turn the camera back on, but things like the throttle position sensor down here, stuff like that, just start disconnecting stuff, getting it out of the way, and it just makes the engine easier. Some cars you can actually disconnect the whole wiring loom and take the wiring loom out as one, and you can actually kind of do it in these. The wiring loom goes through the bulkhead. I just like to get it out of the way just so it doesn't get caught or anything like that, but you can do it in this particular case. So yeah, get this throttle cable off and we'll continue. Right, another good thing when you're doing an engine, you need a good selection of tools, just because it's so much easier, and you'll see why in a second. So I've got this wiring loom off, which is the alternator, it's the fuel pressure switch, it's the injectors, and we can now literally set it aside. But there was a connection down here in between the manifold. Now with this set of pliers, I was able to go in and pull it out. If I didn't have these pliers, I'd have to have taken the inlet manifold off. Not a big deal, granted, but it's an extra 10-15 minutes I don't have to do. And it's an extra 10-15 minutes I don't have to do when I actually put the engine back, because I can just use these to clip it back down as well. You know, and if you can take 10-15 minutes in 3 or 4 areas, when you're putting the engine in and putting the engine out, that's a couple of hours you've saved. And it makes a lot of sense, you know, and it's just easier. So we've got one wiring loom out of the way. I've got the throttle cable soaking in a bit of WD, and see if that's going to loosen up, because that's completely wedged in there. What we're going to do next is take off the wiring loom for the spark plugs, and then I might just go underneath, start taking bits off underneath. The reason why this engine's seized is oil pressure. The customer this is done 400,000 kilometers. Can't remember exactly, but it's in between there. And he was noticing the oil light was flickering, and we needed it for his job, so he kept driving, heard some funny noises, and bang, it just wouldn't start. So I checked it out, and unfortunately it's seized. So that's the reason why we're replacing it. There is plenty of oil in it, and the oil isn't particularly bad. It is black, but it's not like the worst I've ever seen. So it was just oil pressure, not getting anywhere, and yeah, engine just seized. So there we go. I'd say what's mostly happened is the pickup at the bottom is completely gone, and just, yeah, oil's not circulating. You know, heavy driving, going up and down mountains and stuff, because he works on the wind things and yeah, so that's what it is. So now let's get this wiring loom off the top, and we'll lift it up. Right, we're kind of getting there. You can see all the wiring is off there. I had to take a pipe off there just to get the wiring for the coil packs off, and there's just loads of little clips down here. As you can see, I can barely even see them on camera. There's a couple more connections under here, a few more clips along there, and the whole wiring loom is away from the engine then. That means I can basically just, you know, start separating the engine. We're going to go underneath, take out the engine mounts, take out the drives, drain the gearbox oil, drain the engine oil, and we're going to be ready to basically lift it. But I have to say, these things are fantastic. I have a few different sizes. Now technically they are for pipes. What you're supposed to do is go around a pipe and it loosens a pipe off. What they're really good for also, because they've got the hole in the middle, they're good for taking off clips, pushing the clips down and pulling it out. That's also what I was able to separate the throttle cable with this. Push it on one side and it pushed it out. So I would recommend getting some set of these pliers, different sizes, but they're absolutely fantastic. And yeah, once I've done all that, water pipes are obviously another thing, but we'll get underneath first. We'll do the water pipes kind of last. So once I've removed all this and get the car lifted up a bit higher, we'll continue. Now this is underneath of it. You can see a bit of evidence of the tracks he has to go up and down. So this poor car does get some serious abuse. What we need to do is take off that drive shaft, take off the other drive shaft. I'll show you how to take off one of them. They're both basically the same, but obviously before we do that, we need to drain the oil out of the box. We need to drain the oil out of the sump. I'm going to then, there's an engine mount here and another, or gearbox mount, 2 gearbox mounts there. So we'll take all that off from underneath. We have to take off the starter motor wires because that's the only thing that's holding us up now with the wiring loom. We can do that from under here, I hope. If not, what we'll do is we'll take off, no, we can do it from here, I can see it, yeah, so that's no problem. So, let me get everything set up, take the wheels off. I'm going to drain the sump first, and then I'm going to drain the gearbox here. I'm not going to show that, but I'll drain that. Once I've done all that, then we'll come to take off the drive shaft. Let's have a look at the oil that comes out of this. Oh, wow. I know that's maybe not shown on camera, but that is very gloopy. On the dipstick, to be fair, it looked kind of good. But when you look at that, yeah, I'd say that oil pickup is just completely destroyed and blocked. Lovely. Right, so I've taken the wheel off. I've also started taking down the middle, you just see it here, the middle cross brace here. A couple of 14 and 17mm bolts. This one now is stuck between the rear mount. As the engine lifts up, this bolt will lift up, or I just disconnect the mount from the gearbox, which I'm going to do anyway. I just wanted to kind of get it out of the way. So it's just nuts and bolts. I can't really show it because there's no real room. It's just taken off the 2 bottom mounts. So we've more or less done that, and we'll just finish that off camera. I'm going to show you how to take out the drives. We've drained the oil out the gearbox and out the engine, so we're good to take the drives off. But the drives have these special bolts. You can see from inside there are 12 pointed bolts. You can see they really are, they've got some big grooves on. I'll show you once I get it off what I mean. It's the 30mm. You can see exactly what I mean now. A normal 6-sided won't fit on that. There we go, sorted. Good thing to check now is make sure the CV joint slides out, and it does. So that's really good, because if that's seized in there, that could just make a nightmare. Now hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I am struggling with lights and all that. I'm going to have to get them studio light things. Anyone knows the best ones to get, let me know. Right, what I want to do is take out the 2 bolts that hold the stub axle onto the actual shock, which will allow us then to flip the disc and everything down, that will allow us to get this CV joint out of the hub. Do have to be careful of a few things. If you've got ABS, be careful you don't pull your ABS wire, be careful of your brake line, be careful of a few things here, because you don't want to be replacing stuff you don't have to, because it starts getting very expensive then. Now I don't know if you saw that, but the actual thing came forward, see that? So you need to push it in before you can actually release the bolts. Even then it can be tricky. There we go, bolts released. This way you have to be careful. You don't want to put too much strain on anything here for obvious reasons. So what going to do is we're going to undo this bracket here. It's like a 14mm, which holds on the ABS and the brake line here. There we go. Now you can see we've got loads of room. We can pull this down, and now look, these are under no stress whatsoever. For the sake of one bolt, it's best to do stuff like this. I'm going to put this bolt back. How many people saying you shouldn't be using chrome sockets with an impact? Yes, I know you shouldn't. And I wouldn't mind. I've actually got a set, but I don't need to use it. So what I'm going to do now is push this CV, as you can see, push that out of the way, move this to the side, like that, get a cable tie. I'm just going to cable tie this together. Cable tie will stop any strain on anything, and we just cut it off when we come to reassemble. Now, what we've got to do now is just turn the wheel so the disc is out of the way, and we pop the CV joint out of the gearbox. Right, you can hopefully see it there. There's a few ways of doing this. Some people get this and they just kind of pull it out. The problem with that is you can either break the rubber boot or you can actually break the clip. Again, not a big deal, but just puts more time and money onto the job. So what I like to do is just get a bar and get in behind here, so you've just got a lever bar. Sometimes it is awkward, but you can just kind of sometimes just lever it out and it comes out. And sometimes if it doesn't work, there's a little lip on this and we can just tap, 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 tap. I just know I'm going to get grief for doing that, but we have done no damage whatsoever, and as you can see, the CV joint slash drive shaft is now out, which frees up our gearbox. Sorted. Quickly show you the mounts. There was the 14mm bolts that hold this onto the actual subframe. These were the 2 bolts that hold it onto the mount, and you can just see the mount kind of in there. This is the rear mount at the minute. This bolt here is going straight through the rear mount, which is holding this subframe on. Now I have to take that off because, as you can see, it's a big piece of metal and it's just going to make my life a lot more awkward taking it out. So we will undo this bolt. Here you can just see my fingers, and there's maybe 4 bolts that hold it onto the engine, and we'll take that whole plate off. It just means it gives me a lot more room. Same as this here, you can see how long this is. You don't want this sticking out, because the first thing it's going to do is go straight through the radiator fan, and because it's there, I guarantee it's going to smash the radiator fan and smash the radiator. It just will because it's there. Murphy's Law and all that. And as you can see, there's no room for me to film it, it's just a few nuts and bolts. Right, the dog can see the rabbit. That was a stupid design, by the way. You can kind of see it there. I'll show you it on the cross member in a second. But that's all disconnected. You can now see this mount a lot clearer. They're the 2 bolts. If it's not getting washed out, there we go. They're the 2 bolts we need to release. I see an air strap here. Looks like a 12mm, so release that. I'm going to release the exhaust, like I said, from the manifold here, just before the cat or just after the cat, because it makes my life easier. And then we can change the cat and the manifold all up here once we actually get the car or the engine out. Okay, you can just see that white little nut wing thing at the bottom of the radiator, and what I've got underneath that is my catch can. So I'm going to undo the there we go. Oh. So drain all the fluid off and then take the pipes off. Sorted. Right, got a few more bits moved. What I like to do is disconnect the pipes from the engine bay and leave them on the engine, or completely take them off. The reason is, when you lift in the engine and putting it back in, you haven't got pipes kind of flipping and flopping around everywhere. They could break, they could get ripped. So I have it disconnected from the radiator and I've left it on the engine. Also, a good thing to leave it on the engine is because then you know what you need to change across to your new engine. We're just in the process of taking off the clutch slave cylinder. I just disconnected the canister here, that's now loose, but also the clutch slave cylinder pipe goes onto the canister, so, and the bracket is here, just remove the bracket, 2 11mm bolts there, or 2 10mm, let's say they're 11, and then we can move that out of the way. All the wiring is moved out of the way, and then it's just a case of, I think, the AC pipes, but I know that hasn't been working, so that's just a case of easy disconnecting that because there's no AC in this car anyway. And then the gear linkage cables, which are just behind there, I'll show you when I kind of get that, plus the 2 pipes for the heater matrix as well, they have to come off, and then we're ready to lift this bad boy. Okay, as you can see, all the wiring, slave cylinder and everything is all to one side, should be out the way. We've taken everything off. I think there's always usually one wire. It's essentially the gearbox mount and the engine mount that's holding it together, or holding it in the car. Everything else is disconnected. We're disconnecting the gear linkage cables. To disconnect the gear linkage cables from the actual arms of the gearbox, it's just these 2 little pins. To disconnect the gear linkage cables from the bracket is a bigger version of this pin here, but what I did, you're not going to see it, but just down here, no, you're just not going to see it yet, no. Just down here is the bracket that holds everything on. It's 3, I think it was 11 or 12mm bolts. I just took everything off. I don't like disconnecting the gear linkage cables from the bracket because they're normally seized or plastic clips and all sorts, and they can just break. So I like to take the whole thing off. It's just, you know, you're not going to really get any problems. So what I'm going to do now is just set up the engine crane and get this bad boy out. Might have to take the bonnet off. I've only really had to take a few bonnets off, so we'll see if we can get away without taking the bonnet off, and we'll get everything hooked up and see what happens. Now, I tried to use the correct engine crane attachment and I could not get it onto this engine and gearbox in any kind of decent way, so we're going back to the old-fashioned method. Seat belts. Now, I know I'm going to get a bit of grief for this, but I can assure you seat belts are more than strong enough to support any engine, any car, anything. So we've kind of got it all hooked up through the engine and the gearbox. Hopefully it's kind of balanced. So what I'm going to do next is, just off camera, I'm just going to loosen the gearbox mount and loosen the engine mount, and then once I've done that, we'll set the camera up and we'll see if we can get this bad boy out. Okay, engine ears clear of engine mounts. So it's not the most levelest engine I've ever done, but hopefully it should be okay. Just got to make sure we're not catching anything. I don't think we are. We are free. Just do a few pumps and always check. We've put on a little bracket down there, we're not now. I can smell fuel. Why are we pissing out fuel? Oh, just from the what's left in the line. That's okay. No pipes connected. All looks good. We're going to be close, just need to get it another inch above here, and then the exhaust isn't going to cause us a problem. Close on the throttle cable. Where we was, Well, not anymore. One engine out. Sorted. There we go. What we're going to do this time is we're going to take off the gearbox and we're going to see what state the clutch is in. My guess is it's going to need replacing. It's going to be close. It's not gone. The car is still what it was still driving. So we know the clutch isn't gone, but when you've done all this, believe me, you might as well stick the clutch in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take out the ringer bolts. I know you won't be showing you because you can barely see them. So the ringer bolt all the way around, and before I split the gearbox, I'll turn the camera back on and we will see what is going on. Also I can take the starter motor off, but I have to take the starter motor off to get the gearbox off, so that's one thing going to have to come off. So once I've done that, we'll turn the camera back on. Right, 2 more bolts at the top, 17 mils, and then there was 4 14 mil bolts and 2 14 mil bolts for the starter motor. So sorted. Now theoretically this gearbox should now be away from the engine. Once I get the gearbox off, I'll show you the 3 bolts that I took off for the gear linkages. Yep, this is going to lift up, put it down the exhaust, that's it. Up for me, or are you just gonna completely out? No, this is not going to work. You have to be careful, the engine's at a bit of a funny angle, and as soon as it pops out, it could flip up again. Anyway. The gearbox is now popped, and that's what I was worried about. Right, gearbox off. So what do we think about the clutch? Now, without even taking it off, I can tell you it's going to need replacing. And the way I can do that is because of the fingers of the clutch. They're not flat. And I'll show you that in a second. Right, already I can see in there just all the dust, the clutch dust. So yeah, we're going to need a new clutch. I will take it off, but we're going to need a new clutch. These are the 3 bolts I was telling you about, which then come around here, you will see bolt onto there, so the whole gear linkage cables can come off with the bracket. It's just so much easier, in my opinion, to do that. Just like I thought, the clutch is no good. The guy did say it's had a hard life. I mean, he goes off trails where you really need a 4x4, to be honest. And one time went up and he had to go up in reverse because the car couldn't get traction. So you can see the shininess of the edge here. It's all folded back. It's completely gone there, and it's really close to the rivet. So it's unevenly worn. You even see it's kind of lumping chunks out here, and you can see how unevenly worn it is because there's no lines here and there's lines all the way around. So this also, I don't know if you can see, if the camera's going to show it, just how warped that is, in the sense of inside here it's heated up and there's a huge lip, so you kind of see it there, just how uneven it is. You see the grooves and the lines that are in it. So yeah, just no good. Absolutely pointless putting this back in because this clutch doesn't have a long time left on it, and it's going to be 3 or 4 times more expensive to do it when it's in the car. So I've now got to ring the customer, tell him, order a clutch, so this is going to delay this now. Yeah, the joys. Right, we are just waiting for the clutch. As always seem to be waiting for parts. This is our good engine. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take all the wiring off this, just because it's just going to make it easier for me. It's all been cut and just absolutely, yeah, just been slaughtered. So we're going to take all that off. But the reason why I left it on this engine is because, like I said, I like to leave it on the engine, but it also gives us the direction of where it goes. So what I'm going to do, the likes of these pipes that are easy to get to, I'm just going to take them off. But the ones that are hard, for example, this one under here, I know I can take that one off and put it straight on the new engine, and I know what angle it needs to be. I'm just going to put some marks here, Tipex marks there, so I know what angle it's going to be at the new engine. Then I'm just going to take likes of the starter motor's off, the alternator's off, air conditioning pump. Again, it's just like 3 or 4 12 mils or 14 mils depending, with a bit of a mixture. No point in really showing because it's just a couple of simple bolts. Once I kind of get all that transplanted onto the new engine, we will continue. What you want to do is keep everything separate. Everything you take off the old engine, it's very easy to get confused with the new engine. You might think, well, where's that pipe go, where's that connection go, but it's off the old engine. To keep all that to one side. If you get a wiring loom like this, even though it's been hacked up to pieces, there's a lot of good stuff on here. There's a lot of connections and stuff you can use as pigtails if you want to test something. For example, where is it? Can't see, just down there. We have all the coil plug connections, so if you want to make a pigtail for that or anything like that, you have a lot of really good handy connections. You can see I started putting some pipes on. Still got a few pipes to put on. The likes of this, I don't understand this. Why cut that? It's an awkward pipe to get to even when the engine is out, and it's a little bit longer, and there's connection there, and they've essentially cut it. It just doesn't make sense. So what I'm going to do next is just take off the manifold. You have to be careful with the manifold because the bolts can be rusty, you can break them. I'm not worried about that engine, I'm more worried about this engine, but we've got the manifold off this engine, no problem at all. So if we break studs and bolts on that engine, I really don't care because it's not really going to affect us. Right, this next thing I'm about to do, don't do it, because this is where you could really have an issue with breaking bolts, but we don't care because we know the ones on the other engine, all the studs are okay. Now we've got 4 14mm bolts, 2 14s, 2 14s and 2 12s down here. Now, like everything, new manifold, all the works. And I'll let Thomas tell you how to put it back together on the new one. 40.
No need for me to show you how to do it, he says. It's as simple as that, he says. Well, if you were able to remove everything, even after watching this video, and you're looking for installation instructions, and I quote, "Installation is in reverse of removal." It really is as simple as that. Sort it.
Right, these are all the old pipes and stuff off the engine, and like I said, even the pipes are really handy to keep, because if you get a pipe and it's split in the middle, you need a bit, you can cut it, you can join it, you can do all sorts. Things to stay away from. See this O2 sensor? It's not a genuine one. How do I know? Because it's been all packed in here and the original plug's been on it. Stay away from that. That's only going to cause you problems. Don't try and save it to try and keep yourself money. Throw that out. It's just going to cause you issues. But all the other stuff, all the connections and all that, that can really come in handy. I think I've more or less got everything on this engine now. All the pipes and everything are in place. We're just going to take off the starter motor, or the alternator, and the air conditioning pump now, and I've also got to just take off the engine mount. Then wait for the clutch, because the clutch still isn't here yet. So we've got a 12mm up here. I don't know if this is going to... 12mm on here. Shouldn't really disconnect the belt first, but we're not. Tight. Shouldn't do it this way, because as I'm loosening this last bolt, it's going to be putting a lot of pressure on it. So I'm going to do that one first. See, all I've done there is destroyed the threading, possibly inside here. So don't do that. I'm only doing this again because I don't care about this block. I wouldn't do that to a good engine. So just be aware of that. I know I'm going to get questioned. Well, you shouldn't have done that. Well, I just said I shouldn't have done that. But again, this is an old engine. It makes no odds. Ah, how easy is that? Now, when you're doing things like this, you come across problems you don't expect. This particular engine never had an air conditioning pump on it. So, everything's in place for it. When you put the bolts in, they don't screw down all the way. They get stuck after a couple of threads. And don't be just tempted just to force it down, because these are very long bolts. There's a lot of torque going through here, and they will just break instantly. And then you're going to be in trouble. So, there's a few ways of doing it. Obviously, get a tap. This happens to be an M8. It's a standard PID thread, but it's an M8. And you might think, well, what happens if I don't have an M8 tap and die set? Well, if you're doing this type of stuff, you really do need tap and die sets. Now, there is a way around it, especially when you're only cleaning threads. Because we're essentially only cleaning the thread, there is another way around it. You can get a sacrificial bolt. You can get an angle grinder and cut two slots in 90 degrees away from each other. What this will do is this will allow you to screw in the bolt, screw it in and out, in and out, in and out, and it'll collect all the crap in the little grooves you cut out, and it will clean the threads for you. That's one way. Another way is to get a tap. Now, this isn't the correct tap in the sense of this is just out because the threads don't go all the way down to the end, but it'll do what we need to do. So we can just put it in. Again, we're only cleaning the threads, so we don't really, with a special tap in it, we don't really need to keep going in and out, unless it's really, really tight. But we can just screw this all the way down. Should go down quite easy, which it is doing. This is the things that just stop you. You can't, or delay you, sorry. It's just one of them things. So once that's gone all the way down to the edge, we'll just take it back out. Let's just see how much crap has actually come out of that. You can see just how much crap has come out on that, quite a lot. If I then blow this out, you'll see even more crap come out of it, as you saw. Now what we need to do is just check it with the bolt. So I'm just going to run it in and out. That's nice, but look how much crap even comes out after that. Now we can safely put it back on. Only took a couple of seconds to do them all. The right tool for the job, but like I said, in this particular case, because we're just cleaning the thread, you can get another bolt and just cut some slits in it, and that will do the same thing, just a little bit longer it'll take you than this fella. And there we go. We can now shove this back on, and we're still waiting for our clutch. Okay, so our clutch has finally arrived. We've gone from an Exedi 3-piece clutch, which is a really good clutch, as you can see, all made in Japan, made in Japan, made in Japan. So it's not a cheap clutch, it's a good quality clutch. Don't buy cheap things because you will just not get your use out of it, I'm telling you. So we've got a good clutch. This goes in, this is just the bearing on the gear box, kind of twist in, just release them and it slots in. I'll do that because I can't really film that, it's too awkward. And I've shown this on lots of my videos, but I'll also show you how to line up the clutch. Just be aware that you do have, if you look there how thick it sticks out, there is a gearbox side. Sometimes it says gearbox side on it, transmission side here, gearbox side, but if it doesn't, just put the big side to the gearbox. So I'll show you all that in a second. Just let me just pop this fella in and then we'll line up this. Okay, now I looked at this clutch when I originally took it out and it just doesn't look right. There's too many springs on it. I don't know if it's the right clutch for the car. But anyway, it did work and he didn't complain about it not working, but it is what it is. So this is the clutch tool I'm using. Very cheap and never ever failed me. And what I said about the clutch side of the gearbox, you can see how much thicker that is on one side than the other. This goes to the gearbox side. So in other words, when this goes on, the gearbox comes from this way, gearbox side. The other side would be the engine side. So what we need to do is put this through. Very simple. Just goes through the hole. I'll say it's simple. We don't want to go through now. There we go, through the hole, line it up, screw this down, just until kind of get somewhere close, screw the end in, that will open up and hold the clutch in place. Now what we need to do is pick 3 points on the clutch, and I tend to pick where the studs are, and we need to make sure the gap is even all the way around. So let me just kind of do that now, because if you don't, it means the gearbox won't line up. It'll go in, but the holes won't line up on the gearbox, and it'll just make your life hell to get the gearbox back in. Now once you think it's straight, tighten up the back stud like that, and there we go. One clutch plate centered inside the pressure plate. And now 6 bolts, put that back in, sorted. Job's a good one. So I'm just going to bang the 6 bolts on this, and then we get the gearbox back on. Now I don't know if you remember I was saying before about the fingers being flat. You can see the fingers are flat on here. Just by me screwing it in, you can see how much of a gap there was. This was pressed up against there because the pressure plate is now obviously under pressure. The fingers are level, which means, you know, you can tell the clutch is good without even looking at it. And then this just comes out just like that. It's a bit stiff, but it will come out. And anyway, we'll get that out in a second. Let's push that back through, I think, like that, and then put it down. There we go. And now we can put the gearbox back on. This should be one of the easiest gearboxes you'll ever fit. And what I mean by that is not a Corolla, but the fact that it's on the ground and you're not fighting inside an engine bay. So if I can grab this properly, which I can't at the minute. Now I said that, you can bet it's going to be hard. And already it's proving to be difficult. Why isn't it going in? There we go. Not going in at the bottom. I think my exhaust bracket is in the way. Let me sort that out first. Now, trying to get down a bit. Now the exhaust that I was holding the engine up with shouldn't be in my way. Just so it's not a heavy gearbox. Wow, why doesn't this want to go in? I knew I shouldn't have said this will be one of the easiest gearboxes you've done. The dials are on it, so why don't you want to go in? Typical. Absolutely typical. Anyway, look, there's no point me struggling on camera. All I'm doing is trying to line up this and put a couple of bolts in. I should maybe set this up on the engine crane and give myself a lot more room. Anyway, once I've got it on, we'll continue. Now, I've got the engine set up a lot better, a lot more room. So this now should be relatively easy. But again, now I've said that, it's not going to be. Look at that, in straight away. There we go. Just goes to show when you've got it sorted properly, how easy it should go in. The engine mount or the gearbox mount this side down here was hitting the ground and causing me all sorts of problems. So it's in. See a bolt on the bottom. Alright, so there we go. We are on. So what I'm going to do is just put the ringer bolts on, put the starter motor on, make sure everything's tight. We're going to put the engine back in. That's the plan. Get up and running. Let's hope the engine is good, because we don't know. And yeah, so here goes. Alright, the problem is I have the gearbox too high and the back won't go down enough. I should be able to get away with it, but it's just something to bear in mind. We lift up the kind of angle this like that. You're not going to have an issue. And you really do need two people with you. Now we're very close. Don't appear to be caught in anything. Everything seems to be okay. The engine does need to spin around a little bit. Spin around that way and come to me a little bit. Maybe that's enough. Only a few inches away from this mount. Yeah, all looks good. Now, more or less it. Just a bit of wiggling. Nothing's broke, nothing's caught. Everything looks good. Making sure everything does look good. Yep. So I'm just going to do a bit more jigging just to get this mount in and the far mount, and then we'll continue. But the engine's in, kind of. Okay, as you can see, the far mount is in and the gearbox mount is in. Now, nothing is tightened, the weight is still on the crane, and what you want to be careful of is you can see that I've got no weight on here at all, and I can still unscrew this. Do not have weight pushing against your bolts as you're trying to screw them in, because they'll cross thread, they won't go in properly, they'll cause all sorts of problems. So get both mounts in first before you tighten anything. Make sure everything is loose like that, the weight is still on the crane, then tighten your bolts all together. That way you know that they have gone home properly, everything is level, and the engine is kind of settled where it kind of needs to be. Obviously we've got everything else to put in, but the two main mounts are in. The engine can support itself. Right, we are getting there, not much more to do. Couple of pipes, throttle cable, there's a couple of earths down there, a couple more pipes in there, spark plugs and coil packs, the slave cylinder down there as well, the clutch slave cylinder, and the battery. Yeah, so we're really close. I'm just going to bang in the spark plugs, get them done down home, put the throttle cable back on, fix the earth, because like you have to be careful because this has to go under here before it goes onto the gearbox as an earth. Just stuff like that. Make sure you get your wiring routing sorted properly, and then put on the drive shaft, and I'll film that, and then yeah, we're getting there. Right, there's just a couple more things now. Drive shaft, the clutch safe cylinder I bolted in, I just need to kind of get it home. There's a couple of pipes here and oils, and that's it. Then I've already squirted some oil down the cylinders, just kind of lube it up. We'll have to see. I might leave the spark plugs off just to turn it, just to kind of get a bit of oil pressure in. It'll squirt a little bit of fuel down there, but that'll also help lube it up, so I'm not worried about that. So I think the next thing is I'm going to get these few pipes buttoned up, and then we'll lift it up, put the drive shaft on. Right, let's get this drive shaft back in. When I get the drive shaft back in, it's got to fill the gearbox full of oil. I've shown that on lots of my videos. I just use the 12-volt pump and pump it in. No point in me showing that. Put oil in the engine and put the battery on. I think that's it. And fingers crossed, this should start and sound okay. But we won't know. We'll know in about, I don't know, a few minutes. Hope I won't get in front of the camera too much. Need to remove, clip myself more room. There we go. Now, make sure they're not getting stretched, which they're not. Oh, this is. There we go. Now, there we go. Now, just kind of line everything up. Put a bolt in place, and then just screw everything up. No point me showing that on camera because I'm just tightening bolts. I'm sure there's better things you can think of than watching somebody tighten bolts. That's if I can even get them in. Oh, where will you go in? Now, just don't forget to put the little bracket back on for your brake line and ABS line. The drive shaft's not all the way home. There we go. Now, 6. So I'm just going to tighten up all the bolts, put the gearbox oil in, put the battery on. I'm not going to rest the battery in place and just see what happens. Right, don't know if you can see that the battery's just rested in. It's not on properly. It's not even connected up properly, which can cause a problem. But I like doing it that way, just in case I can quickly whip off one of the connections. But be careful of diesels and stuff because you can cause problems doing that. The coils are disconnected. I just want to turn this engine just for the oil light to go out. Yes, I'm going to put a bit of petrol in the cylinders, but again, I'm not worried about that because that's just going to help lube everything up anyway. So, let's just turn it. Give it a turn first. Good. Doesn't help with the battery being down. Now, let's do it again. Well, the oil light's gone out, but now I'm going to put the coils on there. My battery booster is down. Let's get the charger on it, and the suspense is killing me. I don't know if my battery pack's going to have enough in it, and I kind of twisted the leads a bit. It's the leads on the battery that's kind of causing some of the problems. First start! How easy was that? Awesome! The fan is on for some reason, which it shouldn't be. Wonder I've got the temperature sensor connected. No engine lights on. Oh, the fan could be on because of the air conditioning. Anyway. Right, what I'm going to do now is put water in it. Sounds nice. Put water in it and let it bleed, and then I'll tell you how that goes. What I'm going to do is just pour water down here, wait for the bubbles, wait for it to circulate, wait for heat to get in the car, and we kind of know we're good. That sounds gorgeous. Started nice and easy because it's already primed, and we turned it over a few times. Yeah, it's always a worry with the second-hand engine, but that sounds alright. Right people, we have a couple of issues. We know the fan is running constantly. When I checked inside the car, the temperature was way up. Obviously we just put the engine in, so we know the temperature isn't way up. So I'm just, like I said, I think I said it before, I'm thinking maybe dodgy temperature sensor. But look at the problem we've got now. So I turned it off just to have a quick look to see if I plugged it in correctly or anything like that. It's now hard to start. So it's hard to start, but it also does this. So I've got the old scan tool in, got the old launch diode gun, and it is saying temperature sensor fault. Now, do we have a temperature sensor fault, or do we have, see it says history, so was this happen before the engine? I don't know. Do we have a wiring issue, or do we have a temperature sensor issue? Temperature sensor is right down there, just for the hell of it, just because I've got one on the other engine and I think it was okay. We're just going to quickly swap it, and then we're going to continue. The joys of second-hand engines. Now we've more or less done on the video on the third part, around this area somewhere. I did something on purpose, want to see if anyone has spotted it. I've now rectified it, but I put something where it shouldn't be. I want to see if anyone can spot it. Did it on purpose. Free now, done, the engine is in, it started, the engine sounds good. Revs up like it should do. I've still got to put the battery tray on and the bottom of the airbox on properly, but essentially it's in. Hello and welcome back to another Bodgit and Leggit video. We have Sean with us today, who is going to help us strip this engine below, and hopefully he might smile for once. He's smiling. And we're going to strip this Corolla engine even, and we're going to see why it's seized. Well, Sean is going to strip it. Sorted. Right everybody, what do you think's wrong with it? The first thing we're going to do is just quickly whip off the rocker cover, so I'm going to get Sean to do that to see if we can see anything obvious from the top. I've told him he needs to be very careful with the engine because obviously we don't want to destroy it! You're supposed to jump. Boom! Oh, well actually, the chain, wow. That's what I was not expecting, people. The chain has snapped. Let's, but I wonder what happened first. Did the chain snap? Right, that's not what I was expecting. You don't normally take a chain off with a hammer and move the sprocket like I just did, by the way. But yeah, chain completely snapped. Let's whip off the cover. Right, we'll just hold that engine for a second. We'll just get this set up a lot better. I told you, told you. We'll just get this set up a lot better and then we'll continue. Right, so we're going to get Sean to whip off everything so we can see what's going on. So the dog can see the rabbit. Just completely wedged. The old runner.
Where's the rest of the chain?
It's all wedged inside there. Take off that. Should be 12 mil. It dug into the runner before it decided to go. That's completely been turned around and broke. So the ignition timing is completely gone. Just hold the engine a second. Okay. See if we can just. Is it turning? The Woodruff key's in the way. Anyway, I don't think we really need that off. Or do we? There we go. You can see that got all pushed to the side. That sprocket should move. So the engine wasn't seized in the sense of like you would imagine, like I was kind of thinking it was. Let's hold that. I'll try and get this out. There we go. So the chain doesn't really, there's a lot of movement there, but yeah. What we're going to do now is we'll whip off the head and we'll see what damage is done to the head. Why did the chain break? The engine is not seized, by the way, but maybe it was just lack of maintenance and the belt. I don't know. We're going to find out. But the bottom of the engine did turn when I turned the crankshaft, so, or when I turned the flywheel. So the engine isn't seized in that sense. But what damage is done to the valves and stuff like that, we will soon find out. Right, you might not be able to see this, but as I put my spanner or screwdriver even where the head bolts are, look at the gunk that's coming out. So this is lack of oil changes and all this gunk, and I reckon it's just basically starved the chain of oil, and most probably snapped the chain, overheated, something along them lines. That's what I'm guessing at the minute. So you can just see there's just loads and loads of gunk. So let's get this off and we'll see what the valves look like. He's just clearing all the gunk out of all the head bolts, and then we'll whip it off and we'll see. Right, we had slight technical difficulties. We got the bolt off in the end. It completely rounded. I tried everything, so it was just quicker to cut the frigging thing off. Right, let's see if we can get this head off. Grab the engine shunt. I'm not going to take this off in any nice way now. I don't know if we've got anything else attached to it. It feels like we do. Anything around there? No, that's not attached to it. Oh, hold on, is that connected to the... Yeah, take that off. 12 mil, I'd say. And I really took half my thumb off as well on this fucking thing. Alright, lift this up with me. What is stopping it now? Grab it. Oh, I know what it is. It's the stud, of course. Stud we couldn't get out. Now, just let it. Oh, well, we've got at least 2 bent valves. We can see we've got at least 2 bent valves there. So the timing belt did break, or the timing chain broke before the engine seized, even though the engine isn't seized, because we can actually turn it. The engine turns lovely, as you can see. The timing chain broke, again because of lack of maintenance, but the engine didn't actually seize. So you can even see also where the valve smashed the pistons. Okay, you can see 2 valves bent there, and you can actually see 2 valves bent there as well. So we've got 4 valves bent, and you can see, well, let Sean explain.
So the timing chain snapped, which caused the engine to come out of timing. The pistons to come up and hit the valve, bends the valves. And these ones.
And then we're bent too. Now it feels really graunchy in here. Yeah, again, just bad oil and stuff. This is our problem here, but it feels really, really bad inside the pump. So the chain just starved of oil. Let's see what the pickup looks like. Right, moment of truth. Yep, just as I thought. Oil pickup absolutely, completely and utterly blocked. Wow, just look at that. Let me just wow, there is lots and lots. Look at that. Wow. It is absolutely, completely and utterly caked in there. Look at it. So that's it, just as I thought. Oil pickup clogged. No oil going to the chain. No oil going anywhere, but obviously the chain went before anything else. That was the weakest link in the system, and that's what happened. So oil pickup blocked due to not servicing it regularly. All that stuff basically destroyed this engine. So it really does go to show, service your engine regularly even. There we go, look at that. Right, so that's it really. As you can see, we have a snap chain here, and then Sean has a bent valve and a straight valve. So you can actually see the difference between a bent valve and a straight valve. Now one's an inlet, one's an exhaust, but it doesn't matter. It's just showing you the thing. And obviously I ripped off half my thumb. All good. And I know what people are going to say, oh, well, why don't you just repair the engine? It's cheaper than replacing it. As you'll see from the video up here, you're just fucking idiots, people, because you have to look at the big picture. You can see up here now that the actual for the vvti solenoid valve and everything, you can see it's just all completely broken. So it would needed new valves, new head, new everything. It's just cheaper to buy and replace the engine. So that's why we did it. I must admit, I did think it was seized, but the damage is already done anyway. So there it is. I wasn't expecting a broken chain. Well, maybe a broken chain, but a seized engine first. And as we can see, the engine didn't seize, it was the chain, and which made everything go bang. So there we go. So that's it. Sign off. As you can see, he watches all my videos.
Yeah. I've forgotten.
All right, we got all day. Don't look on your phone.
I'm not.
Take YouTube off there. Don't type in.
Hey, hold on.
Anyway, that's it. So look, hope it helps. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. And don't forget.
Get your hands dirty.
Yay!
Oh, okay.
See you for the next one. Sorted.